Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Watch the Politically Conscious Show as we discuss, are Democrats an effective opposition party to the Trump administration and the Republicans? Also, Trump, tariffs on or off? Some are starting to question, does the president know what he's doing? Is he going to tank our economy? And Trump's approval rating, 47%, is one of the lowest at this point in someone's presidency. If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. What's up, everybody? It is the Politically Conscious Show, episode 18. Got our brother Leo Smith back in this thing with us. Thanks for being with us. If you are a first-time watcher, we are the Politically Conscious Show. We say if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. So we basically break down various political clips around the internet, if you will, things that are on television or on the internet, and just kind of give our perspective from the left and right of it. Emil Bryan is my standing co-host with me, if you will, and so he's on the left. We always try to make sure we balance this out, and we'll jump right into these clips. But Emil, I consider him on the left. Again, I don't think he claims that. I always highlight that, but he is. And so, with that said, give a quick little background, and Leo, you'll be following up and giving a quick background, and we'll get into these clips. Go ahead, Emil. Thanks for being with me, brother.
Oh, for sure. Emil Bryan, I am a political consultant. I've worked on congressional campaigns as well as advised candidates for Senate as well as local positions. My job is to tell the truth. And that's why I'm here with you, Montoya, is there's no spin. It is best to serve the truth to the people and let them make intelligent and informed decisions. I do not see them as sheep. I see them as human beings who deserve to know what's going on.
I love it. Leo, thanks for being back with us. I reach out to you every now and then in your busy schedule and get you on this thing with us. And you say you enjoy coming on, and we enjoy having you. So if you will, brother, quick little background, and we're going to start playing clips to get into today's discussion, as you heard in the intro.
Hi, I'm Leo Smith. I run a little political shop called Engage Futures Group, where after working for the Republican National Committee for a few years and the Georgia GOP for a few years, I started doing what I call democracy producing infrastructure policy making. And I continue to do that work today, advising heads of states and civil rights leaders, everybody, on how to do better policy, particularly for Black people.
Now, I love it. And so if you are watching, I got two political experts. I'm the moderator here. I consider myself independent, if you will, just to kind of give my perspective. And so I'll play clips, if you will, from both sides of the aisle and get both of their perspectives. So let's go ahead and get started, if you will. First clip. I see Emil jumping off. Hopefully he can see this clip.
I can see.
Okay, cool. Just checking. All right, let's do this. First clip for the day. Make sure. Hold on. Give me 1 second. About to start in the wrong place. All right, y'all. Here's the first clip for the day, and Emil, we'll let you actually start with the response to this one.
Donkey of the day for Wednesday, March 5th goes to the Democrats. All of them. As a party, staff, and mother effing crew, for the way they left Congressman Al Green out there on an island unto himself. First of all, salute to Congressman Al Green. Drop on the clues bombs for Congressman Al Green. You got some nuts, OG. Okay, if you didn't watch the State of the Union last night, then you missed 77-year-old Congressman Al Green stand up and disrupt President Donald Trump's speech.
Mr. Green, take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber.
The best way to get it across to a person who uses his incivility against our civility. I'm willing to suffer whatever punishment is available to me. It's worth it to let people know that there are some of us who are going to stand up against this president's desire to cut Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security.
What were you saying?
And I'm also working on my articles of impeachment. This president is unfit. He should not hold the office. 34 felony convictions, 2 times impeached.
Drop on the clues bombs for Al Green. I have no problem with what the OG did there, but here's my issue. Old men for counsel, young men for war. Where was the young warriors? Okay, even if you didn't want to set it off like Congressman Al Green did, you gotta stand with him when he does. Okay, you gotta walk out with him in protest when they kicked him out. Al Green is 77. He out there with a cane, okay, looking like the old man in New Jack City. Rest in peace to Bill Cobbs. Remember when the old man was telling Nino Brown he going to hell? That's how Congressman Al Green looked. But where was the rest of the Democrats? Huh? Y'all left Captain America to fight the Black Order by himself. Imagine if those portals opened up in Avengers Endgame, but instead of coming out to fight, the rest of the Avengers just sat there and watched Captain America get embarrassed. That's what Democrats did to Congressman Al Green last night, and it made an already weak party look weaker. But at this point, it's not about policy, sadly. It's about optics, and I don't know how Democrats can change the optics without a massive overhaul of the whole party. If Trump is as bad as Democrats say he is, then somebody in the Democratic Party has to act like it, okay? Somebody has to throw a middle finger to tradition. Somebody has to throw a middle finger to the norms and do something different. Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. Well, that is an old play from an old playbook. In 2025, when they go low, you got to take it to the floor with them. Okay, you got to scrub the mother effing ground. And Congressman Al Green took a page out of the Republican playbook. He did what Republican Congressman from South Carolina, Joe Wilson, did when he yelled, "You lied" at Obama. And let's not forget Marjorie Taylor Greene disrupting President Biden at his State of the Union.
So, Emil, we'll go to you. Let me give a little extra context, and then we'll go to you. And so, as I watched that clip, if you will, obviously from Charlemagne in the World Famous Breakfast Club, when I watched that clip, a couple things that stood out to me. The party looks weak. I think that is very, very much the case. On the past few weeks on this show, we've been highlighting whether the Democrats have been opposition or not. I think of it as just, in a sense, the idea of proper checks and balances from the party. In a sense, that's how I think of it. But I do think the party has looked weak, just as Charlemagne pointed out. I will just throw out at the end when he talks about when they go high and they go low, using the old Michelle Obama quote, if you will. I don't know if I think opposition has to be, just personally, has to be being like the Republicans in this case. I think that's what I heard Charlemagne saying. So I don't know that opposition necessarily has to be that. I'm not saying I know what it should be, but I don't know that just becoming what you say you're against is actually effective either. That's just a thought I have. Go ahead, brother. What you think about the clip overall? Then we'll go to Leo.
Sure. So there's a couple of things happening at the same time here. I think Charlemagne rightly calls out the Democrats for their weakness, and it's not because they're not trying. Excuse me. I think it's more about that they've been overwhelmed and therefore paralyzed, and there's really nothing that looks like they're doing besides being a very raucous minority. It's got to be procedural. It's got to be something that slows down the train of events. If that's through the courts, if that's through legislation, if that's through debate, they have to be very active and publicly so in order to demonstrate that, yes, we're in the minority, but this train is not going to ride over us without a fight. And the Democrats have not been as conspicuous about their fight in those ways, again, using the parliamentarian procedures, using the tools that are available to them to slow down this train. And you've heard me critique the Republicans. I'll do so again. If they were doing their job and being oversight in Congress the way they were, perhaps the Democrats would have a better result if they were trying to use those tools. But the Democrats, specifically, when you see Representative Al Green stand up and say something, he's willing to take the censure. Joe Wilson back in 2009 was willing to take the censure to articulate a message. I hope that Representative Al Green was doing so as part of a coordinated campaign to show resistance, which is why they did not all walk out at the same time. Perhaps it was, he was the lamb. He chose to be the sacrifice for that play, for that optical play. But it just shows you that the Democrats don't look like they're coordinated as they resist what looks like an onslaught from the current president.
Leo, your thoughts on the clip or anything that Emil had to say?
If our viewers have not been paying attention to the last 10 years of elections, slowly but surely, and in this last election cycle, absolutely profoundly, the Democrats have lost male voters. So when Charlemagne the Guard asked, where are the young men who are ready for war? The problem that the Democrats have had is that they don't like men. Let me make it clear. on one hand, you got the Republican Party with uber macho kind of, regard, and Trump, big stick politics that you saw from J.D. Vance inside that negotiation with Zelensky, and all the Democrats are like, woo, we don't like that kind of negotiation. That's mean. No, it's kind of manly. And Democrats don't like that kind of stuff. And so an OG like Al Green has to stand up and bring back the yesteryear that got us all and much of the progress that Black people got because of strong Black men like Daddy King, who said, I got a suitcase full of votes and I'm going to negotiate with these. Democrats don't like that kind of male leadership. They like celebrity leadership and soft leadership. I'm just keeping it real with you.
That's where we at.
That's why the young men aren't there. On the Republican side, you got lots of young. Do you realize that J.D. Vance is only 40 years old and he's a VP?
Wow.
That's a young man. Where is Al Green's young foot soldier? Democrats won't let him have one. So they get up and they got, Jasmine Crockett, who I know, and I like her, but she's entertaining. And I'm not trashing women here. We need young men and young women who know how to use the right strategies that will inspire, because it's not just Black men and white men who left the Democratic Party, but young people did too. And you know why? Because when I look at when my son was 14 years old, he said, Dad, I'd rather you be strong than weak. I need to feel protected. I need to have some certainty in life about some things so I can take a risk and know that when I take a risk, there's going to be someone strong to pick me up.
Oh, that's
Democrats have to decide, do we want that kind of leadership or not? And right now, they don't have that kind of leadership. And that is why that OG, that brother, sat there by himself. Right. And I wept because the Democrats should have either not gone or they should have stood with him and done the same thing.
Let me matter of fact, speaking of the OG, let me play one more clip from the OG real quick, because I think it's kind of hitting on what you're talking about to a degree.
Joint session of Congress. You stood up and spoke out at the joint session of Congress. I think what's getting lost is what you actually said.
Thank you.
And you said that you have no mandate on Medicare.
No mandate to cut Medicaid.
Medicaid.
No mandate to cut. Literally, friends, I had my coat, my cane, and I was about to make my exit because I really didn't want to sit through what I knew the president would do. Mm-hmm. So as I was about to make my exit, he made this statement about his mandate. And I said to him, you have no mandate to cut Medicaid. And by the way, I didn't come to say that. Mm-hmm. I did not. It was spontaneity. It was just something.
Spirit moved.
Yes. So I said it. And of course, the speaker admonished me. He said that I should take a seat. But at the moment, I had to make the point. So I said it again. The speaker admonished me again. And the speaker did his job. He said, well, you got to be removed. And so I was evicted. And by the way, the officers who evicted me were very kind. They didn't say anything to me that was out of order. They were very kind to me. But it didn't matter to me what the consequences were. And I've shared this with other people. John Lewis and I were friends. And we talked about this notion of peaceful protest. And a part of it is not just getting in the way, as he put it. You have to get in the way. You have to be disruptive. People are not going to like you, some. But when you do this, you have to also be prepared to suffer the consequences. Mm-hmm. So when I did it, I was prepared to suffer the consequences. And I'm prepared now. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to like the consequences. Mm-hmm. You can be prepared to suffer things that you don't agree with. I don't agree with what happened, but I was prepared to suffer because Medicaid means so much to so many people. 1 in every 5 persons with insurance in this country is covered by virtue of Medicaid. Mm-hmm. And if we lose Medicaid, we're going to lose lives. The president, by and through his agents in Congress, has issued a mandate, we passed legislation, to cut $880 billion from the committee that has jurisdiction over Medicaid. You cannot do that. You cannot do that without cutting into Medicaid. And if you do that, you're going to hurt a lot of people that I represent.
You know, when you say you told people to vote for their conscience, and then 10 Democrats voted to censure you, what does that say about their conscience?
Mm-hmm.
Emil, I'm sorry, Leo, I'm gonna go to you on this one. Kind of let you continue your thought, but I feel like that was an example to a degree of what you're talking about. One thing that I really loved in it was just him highlighting when protesting, accepting the consequences. I think that's something that's lost on the newer generation. When we want to become disruptive, when we see some of the even in the riots in the past, I don't know if we always understand that how it should be done if you actually want to be effective. So I felt like we heard that as well. And then I am a little concerned about what he says, hey, if we cut this amount, we're going to hurt some people. I don't know if that's politics or if we feel like those numbers are real when we start throwing out the $880 billion and what it actually is to the budget and that type of thing. I don't know in that sense if he was just playing politics with that part. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on what you just saw.
No, good question, brother. I mean, there are two issues there. It is what is compelling people to not get to strategic operations like that, and the congressman brought it up in that folks want to be liked. They don't want discomfort. This is a dopamine-inducing, social media world where people want, and young people, old people, even folks in their 40s, they want to feel liked on social media. They want either money or likes. And actually, people are more interested in likes than they are money. And you see it all the time. That's why people waste all their time on social media, not getting paid a dime sometimes. They just want the likes. It's the fix, the dopamine crackhead fix that they're getting from getting social likes. And they hurt. They are in pain whenever someone doesn't like them or agree with them. That's why most of the time, if you watch MSNBC or CNN and you have these liberal progressives on there and they go, right, on top of, they make a statement and they go, right, they're always seeking agreement. Be true to your statement. Say something without saying, yeah, right, don't you agree? Don't you agree? They're always seeking. We have to somehow understand the implication of this conditioned new behavior that these folks have, that they will not do anything that makes them uncomfortable unless it's the kind of performative display that they can grift off of, sort of like trauma bonding and trauma pimping, that kind of stuff they'll do because that ultimately gets them social play. Everybody wants to hear that life is misery for me too, and I got the same challenges that they had back in 1954. And it's creating an incapacity in us as a people. Now, on the policy issues, of course, politics are always there. And the implication of the devastation that will come if Medicaid is removed, that's real. It's actually shared by conservatives, liberals alike. Republicans are concerned about that too. Now, Trump has, let me just be for the record, Trump says, I will not touch Medicaid. He has said it over and over and over again. CNN reporters say, but you're going to come in. He goes, look, I've said it. I'm not going to say it anymore. I am not touching Medicaid. Now, Al Green actually said the truth. Trump has not said that he will not cut the bureaucracy that governs Medicaid. Okay. This is the same thing, ladies and gentlemen, that is happening with the Department of Education this morning, okay? That we're going to cut the department's bureaucracy, not the funding to education. The funding to Medicaid is not part of the Trump proposal. So Al Green is playing politics a little bit there. I just want to be clear.
And that's what we're here for, to weed through what we're hearing. Emil, your thoughts, if you can keep it quick, so I want to start pushing through some of these other clips.
Absolutely. Al Green mentions $880 billion. That number has not been solidified. The Republicans passed through the House a $2 trillion resolution to cut the budget, but that doesn't mean exactly what. They have not specified what that budget looks like yet. There's a lot of proposals in committee and subcommittee, so there's still numbers that need to come out. I will say one thing to Leo, and he's 100% right about what it looks like, especially in front of the public, that a lot of leaders are not stepping into their leadership role, but we have seen young men and young women go to war in public in front of forces that are using tear gas and billy clubs, and they're standing up for their rights. It's not on social media. They're not getting lights, but they are willing to stand in front of those forces that are trying to repress their right to speak. And they have said unequivocally in those moments, we're brave enough and strong enough to stand up to you, and we're willing to take the consequences of that action. So there's a difference of opinion here, because I've seen with my own eyes young people doing the work, and they're not Republican, they're not Democrat, they're just young people standing up to what they believe is an unjust system, and they're willing to suffer the consequences, including being hit, being arrested, being taken into vans that have no markings, and being tear gassed. So I do agree that the public face of this is not quite as clear, but there's more than one way to look at this, and I'm seeing the other side.
Montoya, I just want to do this because what Emil is saying is so critical and it's so true, and I agree with him. And that clarification I really appreciate, because we have to look at who is willing to do the work. Unfortunately, it's not the ones elected. Those young people need to be empowered, and they need to require that those elected, they need to be protesting those who represent them. And it's not always the person who is in another district. Maybe they're in a Republican district, maybe in a Democrat district, but they need to say, where's my representative in supporting Al Green? Where was Warnock? Where was Ossoff? They need to challenge them. And, and so that needs to happen.
Nah, fair enough. I love those thoughts. Let's continue on this idea of, in a sense, the Democrats. We brought up Jasmine Crockett. So, she's obviously been in the news recently because of this, if you will. And I'll say unfortunate.
Let me tell you what you guys may not know. She wants you to believe that she's straight out of the hood, okay? She wants you to believe that she's the star of her own little gritty street drama, but I want you to hold on for a second. There's a plot twist. When it comes to Jasmine Crockett, the actual truth is she's more like a character from a high-budget rom-com set in a pristine suburban neighborhood. Let's call it Fresh Princess of Dallas. She attended an elite private day school where the tuition cost nearly $35,000 per year. She ain't from the streets, y'all. This institution, known for very privileged clientele, and it provided her with the level of education and resources that many in lower-income neighborhoods that she's trying to relate to could only dream of. So I want you to picture little Jasmine, fresh out of her exclusive day school, rolling up to the playground in designer sneakers, ready to take on the world. Meanwhile, kids in the neighborhood are trying to figure out how to navigate the complexities of the ice cream truck schedule. She didn't have the struggle, folks. And then she went over to Rhodes College. Let me tell you what the tuition at Rhodes College is. Any guesses? It's $55,000 a year. Oh, little Jasmine was getting educated. I mean, at $55,000 a year, I half expect her to show up in class in a ball gown sipping Dom Perignon while discussing Shakespeare and the finer points of avocado toast. But somewhere along the way, she traded her glass slippers for Ebonics. So let's be real. Jasmine is cosplaying a gangsta like she's auditioning for a reality show called Real Politicians of Privilege. Now, we can just imagine her strolling into a meeting wearing a hoodie and an oversized sunglasses while her assistant carries her $500 designer bag filled with organic snacks, rolling in to represent the streets with the mocha latte and the stock portfolio. So when she TikToks to they not like us, the fact is clear. No, she ain't nothing like us.
So, Emil, I'm going to go to you, but I'm going to set it up like this. I think Jasmine is brilliant. I think she often, especially when she's seen in Congress going back and forth, she's very thorough in her information, which is really just a tribute to her legal mind and how she approaches things. I'm a legal study major, so just in that sense, I relate to how thorough she is when we see her actually in action, right? I think the dance set her up for what we just saw. And not that I'm focused on what we just saw, because I would say what we just saw is the extreme end of, I don't know this guy. I don't know who, to give him credit. I don't know him, but I would say he's the extreme end of the crazies, because what he's setting up there is the not like us. It's undertones between the black and white thing and what we just watched. If you were to rewatch it, I don't know if anybody caught that, but it's clearly that. I only chose to play it because as much as brilliant as I think Jasmine is, I think At least from my perspective, I'm 50 years old, so maybe I'm too old and outdated. Maybe she's catering to the youth in a way. But part of the issue with the Democratic Party from an optic standpoint, as Charlotte Lane mentioned in the previous clip, from an optic standpoint, too often playing to that aspect to cater to some of us and our constituents. So in that sense, I did not like her choosing to just pop up and do that. One thing, if she's riding around and listen to it and we just have somebody catches her, that's A-okay. She listens to hip hop, right? Obama listened to hip hop. But basically putting on a full-fledged video sets her up for attacks like we just saw, and it will pull away from her brilliance. I don't know what her future is, but that video will hurt her if she decides to run for something later, I think, in my opinion. But that's my long thoughts on it. Emil, just your perspective on, again, Jasmine Crockett and her being some of the young guard for the new Democratic Party. And I like her, but I think she hurt herself with that.
So this is the youth versus age argument. First, let me unpack something that he said, because it infuriates me when people do this. And he did it, and he went there, and I do not like it. I went to an exclusive school. I went to an exclusive public school that, if you went by the numbers, meant my mother was rich. My mother was a single mother who was not rich. She made me take a bus all the way out to that school in order to get the best education that she could afford, which meant that I had to take a bus an hour to an hour and a half every day to get to it. So you can't say that just because someone went to a highfalutin school that costs a lot of money, they are therefore from wealth. Her father's a pastor. Her mother's a former postal worker. If anybody's middle class, it's a black pastor like that. Yes, he ended up in large churches, but 25, 30 years ago, he was not in necessarily these large mega churches making a lot of money as a pastor. Why do I say that? Because he immediately put someone who went to a country day school into someone who's not quote unquote black or quote unquote authentic. That's infuriating. We're not black monolithically. Black does not equal poor. Black does not equal uneducated. Black does not equal didn't go to a great school. Black means black. And we have a spectrum of people who we call black that look just like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, all the way down to someone from a neighborhood that has been underserved and kicked in the you-know-whats for decades. My point is here that Jasmine Crockett comes from a generation that uses social media differently than others do. Will it hurt her in the future? I don't know, because she made a connection with people that she wanted to connect to. That I'm not saying that that's right, right or wrong. What I'm saying is that she's appealing to an audience that many of us don't understand. Perhaps it will bite her in the ankle one day when she tries to go to higher office, become a senator or governor or more. But who is she talking to? She's talking to people that she believes she can galvanize in a way that makes sense to her. I don't necessarily agree that that's the best way to do it across the political spectrum, but she ain't trying to do that for the political spectrum. She's doing it for a very specific audience, and I guarantee you she reached that audience.
Leo, your thoughts?
So when Jasmine, who I, again, met personally, had great conversations with her, even talked about her education and who her friends are. She has a lot of Republican friends, by the way. Conservative Republican friends, not necessarily those in Washington, but when she's in Texas, where she went to school, how she went to school, that all became part of her mix. And that makes her not like us. Because most of us are heavily polarized. We don't have that mix. And the brilliance and the talent that she has, engendered by the education that her parents sacrificed for so that she could have, gives her abilities that are not like ours, that are not like us. Yes, sir, you're right. She is not like you. She's smarter. She's better educated, better connected. Her friends come from elite economic stratas that you don't even kind of get to hang out with very often. I don't know a whole lot about you, sir, but yeah, she ain't like you. And that is what's scaring the hell out of y'all. Because now, yes, the social media tool is there for young Black people to get out their message, young people to get out their message. But they also have a set of rhetorical skills matched by a manifested understanding of ethics of intelligence. And brilliance doesn't always lead to electability, as Brother Brian is saying. So that's because we know if brilliance led to electability, then we would have smarter people in Congress. And we got a lot of performers and Hollywood for ugly people.
We will be on our 4th black president by now, if that was the case. At least, right? We'd have been on at least 4 black presidents by now, if that was the case.
I mean, look, let's just be real. The reason why a lot of this rollback on intelligence is happening because it's scaring people. Black women are the highest educated demographic in the country. This is scaring the heck out of people. And so you're going to get little statements like that. But see, I don't really care what he has to say so much. I mean, it's not. So what we should do, like Du Bois would have us do, is recognize what she's achieved, what others have achieved. My children have the same sort of education: Westminster, Duke, USC. So they're just like her, right? So the question is she like black people? Black people are excellent. Black people are high intelligence. So that's not unlike black people. It's just not like the black people that white people like to put up on a pedestal.
Exactly.
Hello.
Exactly. I knew y'all would tear it down just like I saw it, but I thought it, again, was just an opportunity to have this dialogue, if you will. All right, let's jump to a whole nother issue that we promoted.
No, the products stay off the shelf. They're not going back on the shelf until the threat is gone. And even after the threat is gone, we will redouble our efforts to diversify our market so we're never in this position again. We focus on Republican states and their products because we know who's doing this to us. We know who's enabling the president to attack us. And it is the Republican politicians who are standing by silently as companies in their jurisdictions, the people that they swore to represent, are hurt by these tariffs, as the people who live in the communities that they swore to represent face more expensive homes and gas and electricity and products on the shelf, including food, after campaigning that they were going to lower costs. So we're sending a message to those allies of the president. We see you. We know you're the ones who are doing this to us. Stand up for your constituents. Deliver a message to the president. These tariffs hurt everybody. And if they do that, he will stop the tariffs. And then we can all move on to a better place of being able to try to reestablish some sense of normalcy in our relationship at the political level.
Leo, we'll start with you. Politician out of Canada, obviously upset about, our allies north of us, if you will, very upset about how tariffs are being used. Seemingly they're on and off. That's kind of what's been in the news here recently. Your thoughts to, again, obviously a very upset Canadian politician saying, hey, in this case, the Republicans need to, in a sense, stand up and stop this issue from his perspective. Your thoughts, brother?
Good. Hey, look, good to hear from him. And I'm going to say this. It's sort of like the Mike Tyson idea that you don't really know what plan is going to work until the first punch is thrown. And the punches are now being thrown by Trump. We know he's that kind of negotiator. Others have written books about him being that kind of negotiator. He's throwing punches. He's throwing everything, roundhouses, uppercuts. He's trying to land something to see how they're going to react. We're now getting reactions. Inflation is down today, everybody. Doesn't mean that it's going to stay down, but inflation is down by 2 points. And so, we are making some progress, even in the midst of all this uncertainty, which the market's not loving the uncertainty, right? The market is suffering. So market doesn't like uncertainty. And it's always like, people, sometimes I have to tell people in my political strategies, you don't know what I'm doing, but I know what I'm doing. Fair enough. You won't understand it until the end result comes. And one thing that you'll hear from Democratic strategists and pundits is they'll go, yeah, we really don't know what the end result of these tariffs and these negotiations are going to be. One thing that we already saw is, as much as that man just said all he said, he actually has already started to make concessions with America. so we're already in some ways winning.
Emil, your thoughts?
Yeah, so inflation is down relative January to February. It's up relative February of 2024 to 2025, February 2024 to today. So you can measure it in a couple of different ways. The fight with Canada is it's what they call in tennis. an unforced error. Canada is our biggest trading partner. We have an intertwined economy with Canada and Mexico. We have the USMCA, the Mexico-Canada-America Agreement, which was negotiated by Donald Trump himself in order to replace NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. Why is all this important? Because this background tells us that we have created an interlinked economy between two trading partners on our north and south border. To use tariffs against them is to deny the fact that we have created this combined, giant, global juggernaut of a economy between the three nations. We have unilaterally decided that tariffs are the best way to negotiate something new with those two nations where we already had an agreement that was negotiated by the same guy who's using tariffs. So the question remains, what should Canada do? Canada should push back. They are not the juggernaut in this relationship. So they're going to have a hard time figuring out what they can do that they can sustain. But they're trying to do something. And to Leo's point, they're not going to give us much of a black eye. They're not going to give us much of a fat lip, but perhaps they can make us feel a little bit of something so that we know they're at least hitting back. Canada and Mexico are our biggest trading partners. What we see them do is going to affect us. So when we raise tariffs on them and they raise tariffs on us, the only people who are really going to suffer are the people pulling money out of their wallets that they didn't have to before all this tariff talk started. And that's going to be that pain, although it's not felt in February 2025 numbers, is going to start coming to pass as the price of things that were normally not tariffed are now tariffed. They're going to take some pain out of your wallet in order to achieve these political ends. And I do not agree that this is the way to do it. But the president has a plan. We'll see if it pans out. But I also know the pain is going to accelerate over the next few months as these tariffs begin to trickle through the economy.
Let me say this. I'm going to play another clip here. So if you recall, we started Politically Conscious right before the actual election, Emil. And I remember, if you may not remember this, that's why I'm bringing it up. And I was highlighting the ticker shock of pricing. And so as us as consumers, we just kind of go by price, right? As if the economy is good or bad, if you will. But if you recall, I was saying in the early shows, I was always tripping that at that time that Trump was able to convince us as Americans that the economy was messed up because there was so much money in the economy that we actually could afford the high prices, but we were so ticker shocked by the prices that when the economy actually got better, we just kept saying prices are high, and they were able to use that, I say, false narrative to convince Americans that the economy was amazing at that time. So yes. I'm only saying that again, that the ticker shock of pricing, I don't know how tariffs are going to play out, but this ticker shock, even if pricing rises, but as Leo said today, inflation is down. In that sense, that means you have the money. But if you're just going by the ticker, the ticker price, the price shock, you're just going to go with the narrative. So I'm challenging anyone who listens, don't just go by the prices to determine whether this is working or not. I'm not on either side of it. I'm just challenging our community to be conscious and think about what you're seeing. Let me play this clip right here.
Did Apple stand on business or did Trump apply pressure? After having a conversation with Donald Trump, man, Apple hired 20,000 workers and announced that they'll be spending $500 billion as a U.S. investment in making things over here. They will build a massive AI server factory in Texas as part of that investment. You know how we use that? I was going to do that anyway. Or was it because Trump said, hey, think about this. That's 20,000 people that wasn't going to have a job here in America. That's 20,000 people that going to have new jobs. Not to mention the people that got to build it. Audi and another company are going to build factories in America so they can avoid tariffs. You know what I'm willing to do, bro? But I can't wait to see, Jose, this real talk. What does America look like 4 years from now? Somebody said something the other day, bro. I was crying laughing. They said... Bro ain't even been in the office a hot 2 months and it feel like he been in there 4 years already. Bruh, I was like, I said, I'm not gonna lie. You ain't lying. It feel like he been in the office a year or two already.
the Wall Street trapper. Wall Street tells you he's an investor. We just had Michael Sutler on last week, who's excited about everything that's happening, and he doesn't get caught up into the headlines that you see in the news saying everything's finna be terrible. Again, I'm not saying one way or the other, but I'm not surprised that a investor is looking at some of this stuff favorably, if you will. Emil, I'm actually who did I start with last time? I always try to flip flop it. I can't remember who I started with after the cut. I think
you started with Leo last time.
Yeah, so Emil, so Emil, you go ahead and give your response to another investor looking at this time as opportunity versus maybe how the rest of us are looking at it.
So yeah, there's a big challenge that we're facing here, and that is, what's the show versus the reality, right? The show is that you have a $500 billion investment from Apple, but Apple during the first Trump administration and since then has said it's going to bring some manufacturing back to America. It's doing so because they recognize that there is a commitment they are not making to America to bring some of that high-tech manufacturing here into the U.S. Within the borders. It just so happens that a lot of this is announced under the Trump presidency, just like the AI investment of $1 trillion with the operation, I can't remember the name of it, that looks like it might not be as effective as it once was, with DeepSeek coming through, was also announced during the Trump administration. There's a lot to unpack here, but the real thing is that Apple is going to invest in America and bring jobs back to America. This is going to be a benefit for America, and Trump gets to announce it. Now, he's a master showman. We've said that on the show many times over. So whether it was negotiated by Biden, negotiated by Trump during his first term, or a combination of the two, which is probably the real story, that it took several years to figure out how to bring Apple's manufacturing back. By the way, is Apple recognizes that Foxconn, its primary contractor for building iPhones, is getting too expensive in China. So they're moving not just out back to America, but they're moving out of China because China is becoming an expensive place to produce electronics. So now they're going to places like Cambodia and Thailand and other Asian nations, as well as bringing some of that manufacturing back here because they're looking at the bottom line. And the bottom line is China has become too expensive for Apple.
Hey, get the real here. Leo, your thoughts on that clip? I want to get to another clip.
No, I think it's very clear that you have to be careful about just listening to political rhetoric about these implications and look at things that are really happening, as Emil just brought up. China's business industry is also bringing a lot of jobs back to America. That's been announced in the last 2 weeks. They're making billions and billions of dollars of investments in negotiation with the current president, which may have been in play before. We don't always know those things. So Emil is right about when these things are happening. U.S. Steel has been clear. That's the one area that we really are seeing direct implications of Trump's tariffs. But Trump actually predicted that and said, I'm doing that because I want steel production in U.S. I want steel and aluminum production to happen in Pittsburgh again. He's made that very clear. So there really aren't any surprises. The Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, has talked about the power of tariffs for actually over a decade. So these really aren't new strategies. It's just these strategies were not discussed in the bubbles that a lot of people have been living in.
All right. Let's play one more cut on these tariffs before we switch the conversation.
You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on, something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity.
So we hear former President Reagan giving his perspective on tariffs for context at that time, right? Like, let's for context, because clearly someone sharing that cut in current times for the way propaganda is going to be used is going to be said without the context of those times. And if I'm listening to both of you correctly, and Emil, you spoke to this very brilliantly when you broke down tariffs on one of our shows, where you literally went through how tariffs work. Even in listening to Reagan say that, you still you can, and this is partly what we say, oh, Trump's on and off with the tariffs very quickly. Well, even understanding what you just heard Reagan say, if the tariff is going to be used briefly versus long term, that's where you're missing that context if you're not paying attention. Reagan is playing out, if a tariff stays in place, this is how it will play out. But whereas Trump is being ridiculed for the on and off, he may be using it, understanding how it works temporarily versus ever letting anything stay in play. And I'm not saying I'm jumping inside of his head, but I am just highlighting the nuance to what you just saw and how it could apply differently or possibly appropriately to this time. Leo, I'll let you respond to that clip first.
No, competition, an increase in competition, and actually the fight the fight to make sure that manufacturing products and supply side tools are not scarce, right? And when you have a global economy, that's something that can be improved by that competition. But the question that Trump is asking is, I don't want that at the expense of American manufacturers and American workers who could benefit from work and jobs and production that could happen here in the United States. Now, Ronald Reagan is comparing 1930 to his time, 1980. Now we're nowhere near 1930 now. The global economies, the type of manufacturing, the use of AI for production, all of that stuff has totally changed the game. But the biggest thing that I want to hold on to is Trump has never said that the tariffs will be long-term. This is entirely, in politics, a day is like a lifetime. Most politicians only think about tomorrow. That's their sense of the future. And so Trump, he really doesn't care about 40 years from now. So I just want us to just kind of put that in that perspective. I kind of like the tariff play because it is a negotiation, a level setting, a redistributing of the whole checkerboard. And I think this is a good thing. I hope that Americans will find a way, if you're buying a lot of whiskey and beer, to deal with that price increase. Maybe you don't drink as much. Maybe you make your own. You can do that, So there's all kinds of ways to get around the cost of things going up in such a small little bubble.
Emil, your thoughts to Reagan and what Leo had to say.
I rarely would agree with President Reagan, but I'll agree with him here. And this is the challenge that I think American business hasn't yet responded to. It hasn't done a good job of explaining itself to the American people why it's purely chasing profits. You can go back to Keynes' version of economics, or you can go to Milton Friedman's version of economics, and you begin to see this picture emerge that American business is chasing profits at the expense of American jobs. And this is a problem that we have not yet fully articulated. We want to blame the president for tariffs, but it ain't the president who sent those jobs overseas. China did not come and jack our jobs with a gun to our head. American businesses are making decisions that affect American lives, and they're doing so, it looks like, purely on profit. So when that happens, you got to ask the business owners, how can you compete in this environment? Is it tax breaks that you need? Do you need something that allows you to see more manufacturing apprentices, right? Do you need a better vocational technical education out of high schools? What would it take for you to keep your jobs here? Do you need to automate more? Because the question we're not asking is business. Why do you keep sending our jobs overseas? Because your profits are going through the roof, but our employment is not. Help us, help you, help us.
I love that nuance. I love that nuance. I'm gonna add some more to it. Just again, we're politically conscious. We want to raise the consciousness of our audience when it comes to politics. Basically, I'm not shocked after I hear you, Emil, that politics for all of this, I would say, pompous propaganda, which again we're attacking here, is not asking the right questions, is what I'm hearing you say first and foremost, right? Not asking the right questions.
Right.
And I'll just throw this little extra context in just to make people think. Buy America. Remember that campaign for so many years, right? Buy America. On surface, it sounds like it's a challenge to those businesses. Absolutely not. Buy America was strictly ensuring that our government was not doing things to ensure that the taxpayers' dollars was being used on American products. The reason in American businesses, the reason I'm making that distinction is because you would have thought Buy America would have been related to those companies, right? Supporting those companies. It was just that our government tax dollars needed to go to American companies and not go out. And the reason I'm making that distinction is because if you don't know that nuance, you actually think that it was an encouragement to those businesses. But to your point, Emil, they were steadily running out of the country on their own, strictly for their own profits. And Buy America had nothing to do with the actual private business making that decision or not. I hope I'm making that make sense.
So yeah, you are. And here's the thing that people don't understand. When you have a Buy America Act, and you can find the Buy America Act, there's one from 2021 that was part of what Joe Biden talked about in terms of, rebuilding America. But here's the thing that the federal government it's the largest single purchaser of goods and services in the country. So it can lead to a shift in how things are produced, or how things are bought, or who's the manufacturer of those things. So by encouraging the federal government, the largest customer in the country, single customer in the country, to do something, you can bring manufacturing back to America. You can bring businesses back to America. You can jumpstart an entire part of the economy through that federal purchasing power. Absolutely. So there's precedent there, but the problem is most people don't understand. America is not just the 50 United States. America is also the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas Islands. It's also Puerto Rico. It's also American Samoa. There's a lot to America when we talk about Buy America. And why does that matter? Because what you're looking at might be Texas or Wyoming or California, but the federal government's looking at the entire portfolio of 50 states, the District of Columbia, and territories when it says Buy America. And your prices can go from premiums in New York and California to very low but livable wages in places like the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas Islands. And all of that is Buy America. So we can encourage the United States manufacturers to find ways to save money and employ Americans.
I love it. Again, that's why we're here, for that nuance. All right, let me play this next.
I'll tell you this, more deficit has accumulated under Donald Trump than the other president in American history, but I'm glad that you're on the fiscal responsibility bandwagon. You're reading these polls, and I'm reading the polls saying the Democrats are 13 points up in the congressional generic, that Donald Trump has the lowest approval rating of any president at this point in his presidency in American history. So your viewers are getting one view, and I'm reading another view. So one of us is right and one of us is wrong. I think the Republican Party is against the minimum wage. I think the Republican Party stands for more tax cuts for people making over $400,000 a year. I think the Republican Party wants to get rid of a woman's right to choose. I think the Republican Party wants to destroy Medicaid. I think the Republican Party would like to get rid of Medicare if it possibly can. I think the Republican Party supports Vladimir Putin. I think the Republican Party is weak when it comes to communist China.
I see a lot of Democrats, do support men their rights to play women's sports. And you're not addressing those key issues that are...
It's the key issue what the High School Athletic Association decides who's eligible to play what sport is the key issue. We're going to continue to help people with health care, with Medicaid and Medicare, or the key issue is that we're going to secure people's retirement security. The key issue is in this century, Under Democratic presidents, 50 million jobs have been created and 1 million jobs under Republicans. I think most Democrats that I know want to create jobs, create opportunity for people, and create opportunity for young people. I don't know of anybody that's sitting there worrying about who plays in the high school track meet. I see you got USAID up there. They spend $41 billion. They spend $41 billion. The federal budget is $6 trillion. I did the math, Sean. It actually comes to something like 0.014%. So take the $41 billion, put it against the $6 trillion, and see what you've done when your president is responsible for more federal debt than any president in the history of the United States. Do you know what year had the most domestic energy production in American history? I happen to know.
I have no idea.
Fact check. I do.
That statement is true.
Domestic energy.
So, Emil, I'll go to you. I want to highlight again. We promoted that we would talk about the president's approval rating, right? And so currently, as James Carville clearly on the left, kind of eats Hannity up on his own show, in my opinion. Just throwing that out as a side, but I wanted to talk about the approval. So I'm kind of concerned about what does that mean right now to the American people for him to have a low approval, as Carville points out on the Hannity show. The way they're showing the polls was, again, just proves to the propaganda. He's like, you're not even showing that to your people. Oh, again, that's why we're here, right? That's why political conscience exists. You're not going to get the whole story if you only watch one side of it. The other thing that I wanted to point out before you go is him highlighting the 50 million jobs, right? The 50 million jobs that have been created under Democratic rule, if you will, versus Republican rule. We know that out of the last 11 recessions, because now that's the big word. We don't have time to talk about it on this show, but the recession is the word that's looming, right, in the media right now. But 10 out of the 11 have happened under Republicans. So it's kind of like, I eventually want to ask Leo, how do y'all account for yourselves? But it's your turn to go first, if you will, Bill. But I just want to throw out, those are the things that clip made me think about. Your response.
So this is the challenge that the Democrats have had for the past probably 25 years. They're terrible at messaging, right? If you're going to run on the economy, run on the economy. If you're going to run on social issues, run on social issues, but don't do this mix and match mosh, which is what you end up with. The hill that Democrats are dying on, it seems to be these social issues that are affecting a very small part of the population when people are hurting in the price of eggs. In fact, let me give the Democrats something they can work with right now. If you have avian flu affecting the number of chickens that have had to be destroyed in order to contain the flu from infecting more of the chicken population, and that's driving up the price of eggs, you can talk about the impact to people right now on that issue. In fact, if HHS is cutting programs that would curtail the spread of avian flu, you would have an argument to talk to the American people about something very clear and easy to understand. Eggs come from chickens. Chickens are dying from avian flu, and we're cutting the programs that would help us control the avian flu. I just gave you a message. Take it. What you're trying to do, James Carville's trying to do, is articulate a bunch of different points, none of which are bad, but none of which have been properly messaged by the Democrats. And the reason why they're not properly messaged is because what Leo said earlier, I will be very clear to emphasize. There's not a full-throated leadership effort from the Democrats that looks like somebody strong is taking the reins. They're not doing that. So what you end up with is someone like James Carville who will spout tons and tons of stats and still not resonate with people because no one looks like they're in charge.
Leo, your response to that clip?
Yeah, I have not seen any political strategy have been more wrong about more things of late than James Carville. It's really wonderful. I mean, what a wonderful newsworthy guy, because he just says all kinds of stuff and just half of it makes zero sense. One thing that we have to be careful about the whole job creation thing, I think Emil kind of alluded to it, is that if you say, hey, we created 50 million jobs, but Black people are still sitting here, poor white people in the mountains are saying, I didn't get one of them, then your stat means nothing. And that's what Democrats often do, and they don't even like own up to that. And the fact is, we don't even know, as he throws out a stat like that, he's doing that as a Democratic operative. That was pure party rhetoric, okay? And so what dates is he using? Is this post-Cold War 50 billion jobs? This is since 1989 when he's not even, more than likely, he's using dates from 1990 on, and I guarantee you that's probably what he's using. Now, the other question is, okay, Democrats create more jobs. Where do they create those jobs? Are those jobs created amongst the elites? Are those jobs created in government? Republicans don't want to create jobs in government. They want smaller government in general, okay? I'm not saying Trump's a Republican. Trump's a Trump. So don't get it all confused with somebody throwing a stat where they're not giving you the citation as to where they're getting this information. It's important for you to go back and look at, you're not going to tell me that Reconstruction led by Republicans, where Black people got to work, was a time when Republicans didn't create jobs. So, I could go back and go, well, Republicans have created more jobs since Reconstruction. That totally changes the stats. We got to be careful about that, folks.
Well, like I said, that's why we're here, to weed through it. Matter of fact, speaking of the jobs, if you will, like I saw this week, I know we're at kind of at the end of our hour, so we're about to close out. But just speaking to some of what you just said, somebody was sharing that people are upset about the 30,000 government jobs that have been taken away, as of recent. And they were highlighting again, and this is why we do what we do, that Clinton during his time did 300,000. Again, it was a meme. It was a meme. So the meme doesn't have the context of that's 300,000 over the course of 8 years per se. But it is still something to speak to because, Clinton is applauded for being the president to balance the budget, and no president hadn't done that in forever or whatever. So that's still a feather in his hat, if you will. I'm just putting a little context here. But to your point, that meme, you have to put it in context. But they were asking, I want to kind of hear both of your thoughts on this and we'll close out. But they were asking, hey, Clinton got rid of 300,000 and we're crying about 30,000 right now. How do y'all feel about even that context? And Emil, if you can stay, I got one more clip to play for you. If you can stay, Leo, if you can stay, I'll play the last clip for you as well. But I just want to hear one quick liner to what I just pulled out, and then I want to play this last clip. Emil,
Clinton did that. It was called the National Performance Review or the National, I can't remember, program for reinventing government or something like that. But basically, that Clinton also signed the Paperwork Reduction Act. There was a bunch of ways that he was trying to improve the efficiency of the federal government. That was a controlled demolition. It was through attrition. It wasn't a shock and awe kind of campaign you see now. So, it did happen. It is true. But again, context is king. And it wasn't just let's find jobs to cut. It was let's figure out the best way to serve the American people more efficiently. The two men are doing the same thing. One is doing it with a blunt hammer. The other one with a scalpel.
Leo, quick thought. And if you have time, you can leave if you need to leave. I got one more clip. It won't be long though. If you got time to stay.
Yeah, I'll hang for a few minutes. No, I totally agree with Emil. I mean, bedside manner is totally different. One guy's going to stick you with the needle without you seeing it coming and doesn't care. And the other guy's going to, whisper sweet nothings in your ear and tell you how beautiful the sky is while they're putting the needle in you. It's the same thing.
Hey, Slick Willie Clinton definitely know how to whisper them sweet nothings.
He's a sweet nothing whisperer.
No, that's real. All right, this next clip, I'm just again politically conscious for everybody listening. I want to set it up very quickly. This clip can be considered. I'm gonna use the term hit piece. I'm not saying I'm not being derogatory because it's very sensitive what I'm about to play. But I'm just highlighting that either side can do this. I'm not downplaying it. Again, I'm going to ask both of our analysts what's real about what we hear, but I am kind of setting up that this could be considered a hit piece. Each side can go pick a certain person and say, and have you sympathize. We had that dialogue last week, unfortunately, about DJ Daniels and how poorly the Democrats represented themselves because they got away from the humanity of that moment, right? And so again, not to take away from the humanity, but I definitely wanted to properly set up this clip, and I just want to get both of y'all response to it. So let me play.
You're in remission now. You had stage 4 cancer, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so now the treatment that you received, is no longer exists or is no longer being funded by the government. And so if you were to have had this cancer today, you might not be here to talk about it.
There's no might about it. I would not be here. My cancer was incredibly aggressive. I was given weeks to live when I was diagnosed. So without these drugs, funded by NIH, like you said, I would not be here at all. I'm 5 years on now, and you can see I'm a fighter. I'm doing pretty well. So I'm going to be okay. But there are so many people that are in far worse situations than I am, including children. So I go up to Johns Hopkins for my treatment, and I see people from all walks of life get cancer. We know that. It's hit everybody's family. Like, everyone's aware of how terrible it is. But to see kids with cancer that cannot get these life-saving drugs because of this is absolutely taking a hacksaw to medical and scientific funding. I just cannot believe that a guy like me could get these drugs and now other people cannot. It's unfathomable. It doesn't. I don't understand how in this country this is where we've gotten.
When we hear about government efficiency, I think what we're not really hearing about is that it's making government less efficient and also not working for people who need it. And I just think your story is so important, because this is not about numbers. This isn't about spreadsheets. This is about lives.
Everyone knows, they've heard the word NIH now. We went through COVID. Like, it's somewhat familiar in people's vocabulary in this country. So yeah, it's as simple as NIH has lost its funding and people are going to die because of it.
Government is there to help. It's not there to hurt. And it feels like it's been perverted, that the government is now there to hurt and not help.
Yeah.
And so what do you think can be done?
Right now, we're at the beginning stages of this fight. I have no idea where we go from here. It looks pretty ugly. I completely agree. But I'll tell you one thing. I will not stop fighting, so I'll be there every day. You'll see this ugly mug.
Leo, I'll start with you in the last bit, again, just to really be clear on what I'm doing by playing that cut. Each side can appeal, right? And so everything that we're listening to, though, we know that is being put in an either or context. And so my question, and I'll let you respond really however you like, but my question is, what am I not hearing? Again, if me not knowing what NIH is, I was, just admittedly saying, I don't know what that is, but I'm hearing, oh, it's not being funded. And now all these people that are, at risk of cancer. And I know it can never be that extreme when I'm getting it from a political take. It can never be that extreme. Just your thoughts on that cut.
NIH, National Institutes of Health, has not lost its funding. So the entire premise is BS, okay? Are all departments in the federal government being looked at and disrupted? Yes, all, including the military. So this, I have deep empathy for the man. Someone is saying that I had cancer and I got drugs because of research that's done through the United States government supported. And kids today can't get the drugs. That is so far from the truth. That is not happening. And that's all I can say.
And again, I wanted a response because, again, that's what we're here for, right? Emil, your thoughts on that cut?
So what the administration has done is freeze funding to lots of the programs that the NIH runs. Let's go over the NIH real quick. The National Institutes of Health were started in 1887 at a Marine hospital in New York, and it's grown into the world's premier institute for research, biomedical research. Our spending $47 billion in fiscal 24 dwarfs almost everybody else's biomedical research, every other nation's biomedical research programs. And the results are very, very clear that money is being spent wisely in terms of the scientific results that come from the NIH. It's leading the world in so many different ways. There's a fear, and it's a reasonable fear, that freeze in funding will become permanent. Right? So the funding is set by Congress. We always say that Congress sets the funding for any program in the budget. So Congress has not cut the NIH. The president has frozen funds that go out from the NIH, and there's a difference because those funds still have to be spent because Congress passed a law that told the president to spend that money. So now we have to figure out what's going to happen between now and the end of fiscal 25 for the budget for the NIH, since that funding has been frozen. Are they putting new restrictions and new requirements on the grants that they give out in order to do that research? Are they going to change the nature of the research? For instance, if you remember way back in 2017, President Biden, then Vice President Biden, was appointed the czar or the leader of the cancer moonshot. That went through primarily the NIH. There have been over 240 projects initiated under the cancer moonshot because of the NIH, through the NIH. There's tons of research for cancer that comes out of the NIH. So when we talk about this, no, the funding hasn't been cut because Congress hasn't changed the budget that they allocated or appropriated to the NIH, but that funding is frozen right now. And that frozen funding is affecting the research institutions that rely on that funding. Columbia University, for instance, has lost $400 million of federal funding. Is that going to be permanent? We don't know because, again, Congress has to decide what's going to be permanent in terms of law. But Columbia University is changing how it brings graduate students into its programs because of that funding change, that funding shift. And that's happening to institutions across the country. So yeah, people are concerned, and there should be. Is it as extreme as what we saw in that clip? Absolutely not. The research is still there, it's still ongoing, but is it going to change? Absolutely. And how? We're not sure because we haven't seen a plan come out of the administration other than stop funding this stuff. We'll have to see.
Got you. All right, great show today. I think in the sum of what I heard both of you say, just to close that clip out, if I'm hearing y'all correctly, and I'm learning from both of you in this situation, but when I hear the frozen funds, if you will, that was the tactic, the blunt force tactic that was used while Doge and his group, if you will, are evaluating what will stay and what. And so the fear, to your point, Emil, is that somehow that may remain. But the reality right now is, hey, here's our tactic while we look at things. And it's very possible that things will be evaluated and a lot of that funding will return. And at the end of the day, as you always keep saying, even the freezes are just something that's, in a sense, even a temporary power of the president, because the Congress has to ultimately decide what will and will not be funded. So when people are, to be fair to both of you, to say this funding has stopped, don't accept that propaganda as is, because of the process that, Emil, you always talk about. It ultimately has to be decided by Congress. So don't listen to these cuts as saying, hey, the president, in a sense, has unilateral authority to do what you're hearing in these cuts, because at the end, the Congress ultimately will decide. What he has done is froze a lot of stuff, and people are pinpointing the areas where it could hurt the most. And Emil, you're pointing out that even the freeze itself is actually having residual effects as we speak. That's what I think I heard both of you say.
You got it right from my side, that's for sure.
Yes, indeed.
Cool. All right, let's do it again. Next week, we'll pop up on y'all. Politically Conscious, share this with your friends. If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. Thank you both for a great show today. Y'all stay in the backstage real quick.
No problem. Peace, y'all. Thank you.